Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1565A, and today's date is May 10th, 2018, and the title of the episode is No Time Left, Time to Move Away from the Dollar. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been talking about all these different indicators that are showing that we're heading towards this incredible great recession. Actually, it's going to be a collapse of the system. And I believe that we're already in this recession. And of course, what they'll do is they'll go back in time and they'll tell you, oh yeah, the recession started in 2016. And this is what happened since that period of time. We just didn't notice it, blah, blah, blah. And what we're seeing right now is things are breaking down in all different sectors. And it's very easy for the Fed and the rest to mask all of this, to make you think that nothing is going on, that everything is fine. But behind the scenes, behind this illusion that they put up, everything is starting to fall apart. I mean, look in Argentina right now. They were selling new foreign currency bonds. In June last year, 2.7 billion of 100-year bonds at a yield at 7.9%. And in January this year, 9 billion of bonds composed of 5-year bonds at a yield of 4.625%, 10-year bonds at a yield of 6%, and 30-year bonds at a yield of 7%. Argentina's peso is now in free fall, even though the central bank raised its interest rate 3 times last week to a stunning 40% to halt the plunge. Inflation is 25%, and it might get worse. And we're starting to see this in many different countries. Argentina continually has problems where basically they collapse. And we're seeing this, and there are many other countries that are going to see the same exact thing. Right now, the dollar is rallying, and the Argentina government is asking for a bailout from the IMF, and this whole thing is getting worse and worse. And what's happening is this currency crisis is morphing into a debt crisis, because we're not just seeing it in Argentina, we're seeing it in Brazil, in Turkey, in Russia. Rising interest rates in the U.S. has unleashed competition among banks for deposits for the first time in a decade, and the Fed is allowing it to happen. Yes, they are. They want this system to implode on itself because they realize that it can't go any further. And they need to transition into a new system. They just need an event. They need a individual, a group, a country to blame it on. And once they have that, well, they're going to go forward with it. We can see already from a lot of the corporate media articles that are out there, they're already saying it's Trump's plans, it's because of this. And again, we're talking about each side trying to gain the narrative. Actually, if we look at some of the hedge funds, we see that they are now shorting the entire market. They're saying companies are going to be going down, and that means we're headed into a very rough period. And we can see billionaire hedge fund managers, their expectations of further market disruptions are coming. So we see already that they're planning on this. They know what's coming. The insiders always seem to know when things are going to happen. They get a heads up. They know the inside track of what is going on. And this is how you know when things are going south. Remember, the central bankers, what they do is they pump everything up into gigantic bubbles. Then they basically sell everything they have to retailers because they think the market's going to continually move up. They think everything is going to be great. They're going to go into housing. They're going to go into the market. They're going to go into the bonds. They're going to go into everything. And this is when they bring it all down. Now, it looks like Russia, they're realizing that there is no time left. The economy is basically ripping itself apart, breaking down very, very quickly. And we can see this because and we mentioned this yesterday, if the Fed raises the interest rates 2 more times, the yield curve goes inverted, we are in a recession, the whole thing starts to fall apart. Remember, once one of the dominoes falls, it's going to hit another domino. So if something happens in the bond market, it's going to hit the stock market, it's going to hit the housing market, it's going to hit the derivative market, and the whole thing is going to be a disaster. What happened in 2008? everything started to fall apart. The first domino fell, and then all of a sudden, this company, that company, this company, the market fell. They needed bailouts. Everything just started to fall apart. You saw a huge amount of layoffs. There were people in their homes that had no jobs. They couldn't even turn on the lights. They didn't have enough money. People were staying in their homes. They're saying they weren't leaving. Out in California, people were just walking out of their homes because they didn't care. They left all their stuff in the homes. It's going to happen once again. And Russia and China, they realize that this was going to happen. And it looks like Putin is out there, and he is saying that it is now time where Russia is completely independent from the petrodollar system, stressing that the West is boosting this process through its economic bullying in the form of sanctions. This is not merely a separation from the dollar, he says. This refers to the need of strengthening our economic sovereignty. Our gold, yes, he said it, our gold and our foreign currency reserves undergo diversification, and we will continue to do it. Basically, what he's saying, he sees the writing on the wall. He realizes the Rothschild system, the Federal Reserve note, is dead. And it's time that China, Russia, completely separate themselves, and they are no longer dependent on the dollar. And of course, he's using sanctions, saying this is why we need to do it. The real reason is because the entire system is just breaking down. Because a lot of the sanctions are on individuals in Russia and some corporations, but this is not really affecting Russia that much. What's really affecting Russia is the petrodollar. And the petrodollar is affecting many, many nations around the world as it continually declines, as it dies, and these countries, they don't want to go down with the dollar. So they've been building their infrastructure. They've been building their gold reserves. They've been building their exchanges. They've been building their markets. They've been building their bilateral trades. They've been building all of this for a specific reason. The reason is because the entire system is falling apart. It is breaking down, and the whole thing is getting ready to go under. This is why they've been doing this. And basically, as we can see, many countries are basically adapting and moving towards the petro-yuan, away from the petrodollar. And the central banks, they realize this. They understand that this system can't go on forever. And this is why they're getting ready, and they're moving very quickly now to bring it down. Now again, both sides want to control the narrative. This is the game here. Because whoever controls the narrative, and we discussed this before, they're going to be able to tell the people what has happened. It might not be the truth, but they will tell them whatever they need to tell them to convince them that we need to go to a new system. And of course, it's not going to be because of the central bank that they don't want to be blamed for this. They're going to blame this on something else. If Trump and the Patriots get a hold of the narrative, they can turn around and blame this on the central bank. This is what the central bank is trying to avoid. They do not want this to happen at all costs. So it looks like at this point, the central banks, they're most likely going to raise rates until the system starts to fall apart. And this will allow them to start to lower rates and use other tactics. And of course, they're going to blame the entire system falling apart, most likely on Trump or maybe another country. It looks like they might be blaming it on Iran. We'll get into that in a little bit in the next report. But we can see right now they are definitely pushing their agenda. And we're going to be going through this transition one way or another. No matter who has the narrative, there will be a transition into a new currency. How long will this transition be? We don't know. This is why you need to be prepared with food, water, supplies. You need to have gold and silver. Remember, gold and silver have been money for thousands and thousands of years. They retain their value, especially when paper currency dies and a new currency system is born. They pretty much ensure your wealth. A lot of countries are looking at cryptocurrencies. You should have some cryptocurrencies to use when the system comes back online. You also need cash because in the beginning stages of when the system's coming down, you will need this cash to purchase items as inflation hits and as things start to rise in price, which means the value of that paper dollar is decreasing. They will become worthless, just like in Argentina, Weimar Germany, in Venezuela, and you'll end up bartering. This is why you need supplies. It's not just for you to survive by eating the food and using the toilet paper and medicines. It's also to use to barter with individuals. So let's say you ran out of certain items, maybe it's food, you might have extra rolls of toilet paper and you might be able to trade this for the food. When the system comes online, you will use your gold and silver to establish your wealth. You will use the cryptocurrencies to most likely pay for things, because at that point in time, we will probably be on a crypto coin where we're using it to transact business. You'll be able to use the gold and silver to purchase said coin. And that means you have maintained your wealth by holding on to this. And of course, stocks, bonds, and other things, if depending on what company and depending on what you have, they might be worthless or they still might be there. Land is always good. Land just doesn't go away, so that's good. But we can see that there's going to be a certain period of time where we're going to struggle through this transition. Now, some people are going to have a much harder time than others because they're not really prepared for this. They believe that the economy was going to continue on the way it is, their lifestyle was going to continue on the way it is, and nothing was ever going to change. And of course, when it hits, everything's going to change. Just like in the 70s. A lot of people didn't realize what was going on. A lot of people coming out of college, they couldn't find jobs in the 70s. And they couldn't get fuel for their car. And it was very hard at that point in time. Credit kind of froze up a little bit. And we had interest rates rising because they were printing a lot of dollars at the time. And you could see that there was a huge amount of inflation. Wages had to be readjusted. And everything was out of whack because we were coming off a gold standard, moving on to a petrodollar system. That was a transition period. But again, back then, we were the reserve currency of the world. And we were moving from a stable system to an unstable system, but it was the beginning stages. So yes, there was a period of a hiccup, but this time it's much worse. We have trillions upon trillions of debt, not just here in the United States, but global debt. We have derivatives that are just completely out of control. And the dollar has lost basically almost all of its value. And we see right now that this is going to be much, much worse because the United States will no longer be the reserve currency. So we're not coming off the gold standard, moving on to the petrodollar system. We're moving off the petrodollar system, which has been basically destroyed, moving to a completely new reserve currency, whatever that might be. And gold is going to be reevaluated, and it's probably going to be much, much higher than it is today. And this is why that will ensure your wealth. I mean, look what happened when we came off the gold standard in 1971. What happened during that period? Well, if we look back prior to 1971, if we look at 1968, the gold price was around $43 an ounce. If we look in 69, it was around $41 an ounce. 1970, $38 an ounce. 1971, $44 an ounce. 1972, $63 an ounce. 1973, $106. 1974, $183. 1975, $139. Go to 1979, $459. And we can see, yes, it dropped a little bit and it went back up. And if we look at 1996, it was at $396. And then all of a sudden, around 2005, it went up to $513 an ounce. 2008, $869 an ounce. And it went all the way up in 2012 to $1,600 an ounce. And basically, we're around $1,300 an ounce today. So you can see, as we came off the gold standard, gold kept on moving up and up and up. When we come off of this dollar that is completely dying, and now the gold price has been completely manipulated, what do you think the gold price is going to go to once we move to a reserve currency? So you can see the difference, because the gold price from the 50s all the way up to 1970 stayed around $35, and then it changed in 1968. This is when they started to print some money here. And then it changed a little bit more in 71, 72, and then boom, it started to skyrocket. So you can see we were at a level playing field at $35 an ounce, and then the central bankers, they started to basically create a lot of currency, which devalued the dollar, and all of a sudden we see gold start to move up. We come off the gold standard, and gold just shoots up. So if you're holding gold now at $1,300 an ounce, even if you bought it at $1,600 an ounce, let's say you did, and we come off the dollar today as the reserve currency, it's completely gone, and we move to a new reserve currency, do you really think the gold price is going to be $1,300, $1,600? No. It's going to be adjusted. And it's going to move up much, much higher because this has been manipulated down. Because as the dollar lost value, the gold price really didn't move up that much. Actually, it stayed pretty even and it came down a little bit because of manipulation. And we're going to see a huge change once everything completely falls apart. I mean, we saw a huge change when we moved from a gold standard to the petrodollar standard. And back then, they just let gold move up to the new value of the dollar pricing. And now, they're going to lose complete control once everything crashes. And these countries that are holding gold, like China and Russia, they already understand this. They already know that once this system breaks down, guess what? The gold that they purchased at $1,100, $1,200 an ounce, $1,600 an ounce, it's not going to be worth that. It's going to be worth 10 times that, and they understand that. And this is how they're going to build confidence in their countries. So get prepared, get ready, get your insurance policy. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.